G'day, Michael here. Here I've got another batch of cutting boards from the eBay store, and how I've treated the corners is I've chamfered them. So focus. Come on camera, focus. There we go. So you can see you've got a chamfer coming this way, that way, and also on the end. Now, to do a nice job of that and to be sort of commercially efficient, you've got to have a method that is reliable and does a fairly neat cut first up. Otherwise you have a lot of time spent sanding. Now this can be done by using hand plane or maybe an electric plane or a jointer, but my preferred method is in fact using my spindle moulder. So now you've seen that up close. Hopefully I'm not shaking too much. As you can see, they're all focus. They're all quite beautifully consistent. Okay. So I'll go over to the machine now. Okay, so this is actually the machine that I've used. Oops, banging everything. It's on my Felder BF5, which is an old combination machine. But Felder as a combination machine is quite a good quality machine. It's fairly precise cutting. And this is one of their least favourite machines. If you talk to Felder themselves, they're not very happy with it. But nonetheless, it performs quite well. Anyhow, what I'll do is I'll open this up so you can see what's inside. But what I have primarily here, sorry, before I open it up, is we have obviously a table. I've just used some MDF. I've got a piece of Tassie oak here as my fence here. Now all this prevents me from falling into the cutter with the board. I'll just grab one of the boards. Okay, so here's one of the finished boards, but I'll just demonstrate what I did to make this. Now I could use this to run this way and take the chamfer off, the long pass here. But I was also capable of running with edge vertically, just guiding by hand. Right, I'm doing this one-handed, so it's a bit wobbly and so forth. But so what I would do is I'd cut the short pass like that, then follow with the long pass, then the next short pass, and then the next long pass. Then I'd do the opposite end. Because what would happen is the ends would break out. So I'd turn him around. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then I'd do all the with the grain or lengthwise cuts, all 4 of those afterwards, and that would clean up everything. So I'd have, if I had chipping, it was very little. And certainly the lengthwise pass would clean it up. Now for those that are not familiar with Australian timbers, this is Tasmanian oak, which is actually a eucalypt. And eucalypts are quite hard. You can see it's very straight grain, so it's a good stable timber, but it is a bit prone to splitting. It's not like say Northern Hemisphere oak where it's hard like that, it's dense like that, it's a lot straighter. But it's more prone to splitting and splintering. So we need good cutters to do this job. Now I will actually open up the machine. Just I've tapped some threads into the metal of the machine. These are M6 screws. Okay. This piece is basically to cover the cutters to protect my hands from being exposed to that monster. And of course the table, which I'll get the drill out of the road, the table, which provided a nice flat surface to run on, whereas the machine's own bed is full of steps and bumps. And for this kind of process, particularly for those short end grain pieces, it's not very smooth running. Okay, so by putting the timber fence there, I got rid of all these sort of holes and gaps and bumps in the machine, and also guarded it up so it's very safe for me. Now this cutter looks like a real monster, and it is in a certain way, but using these multiple tips, it actually runs very quietly. Also, in plan view, there are 6 times a cutter hits the material, but it's sort of 2 sets of 3. That's right, 2 sets of 3, yep, that makes sense. Cutters, and it's very quiet. If it had, say, 2 straight cutters, it would be much noisier, and also it would be more sort of chattery, more hammering on the material. Now you can see compared to my hand, it's actually quite a large, let's get the drill maybe, it's a very large cutter block. But a large cutter block gives you a much smoother cut than, say, a small router cutter. I'll grab a router cutter in comparison. Okay, so here we've got 2 router cutters. When you compare it in size to that, it's, you know, massive difference. Now the cutter on the right, I think it's an older cutter. I can't remember whether I've taken that cutter off deliberately, or the ball bearing off deliberately, or whether it's basically just died. But we've also got this other cutter here, which has got disposable tips. If you want a closer look, focus. There we go. Now you can see those disposable tips. You can remove them and rotate them 4 times, so you get 4 edges. So as you know, as it bluntens, you can rotate it, and you get 4 edges out of each of the tips. Also, if you hit something nasty and fracture a tip, you just replace the tip and you're good to go again. And the tips are basically identical to what's in this big cutter block. So both of these cutters have the advantage of disposable tip, and they're quite sharp off the shelf. They're sharper than this type of cutter ever is. But a big advantage that the big cutter block has, obviously a big cutter block, its sweep is much closer to a straight line. So the entry and exit angle when cutting the timber is far less prone to tearing out. Whereas a router cutter has a much smaller sweep, and its exit angle is nearly at a right angle to the edge. So it's very much more prone to splitting the timber up. So doing the end grain or doing anything on sort of cranky grain is more prone to breaking out with a router cutter. So that's why I've used this machine for that purpose. And you could see the way I had it set up, it was very good for actually, you know, manipulating the board going past the cutter. Well, I guess that's it from me. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, ask a question, leave a comment, make a suggestion for a video you'd like to see. That's it. Bye for now.